Previous videos in this series describe the SYSQ process, a simple yet powerful framework for developing high-leverage strategies, the type of strategies required to address adaptive challenges. This video describes an easy-to-use assessment built into the framework that improves your ability to find leverage. I call this assessment 3R pathways. The 3 R's are React, Rethink, Reframe. You'll learn how our typical response is to choose the React path, when what is often needed is to take the less traveled paths of Rethink and Reframe. By consciously using the 3R assessment, you're better equipped to achieve the leverage needed to solve your most important challenges. We begin the SYSQ process by observing system performance and choosing what we want to improve. What we typically observe is a gap between desired performance and actual performance. I'll use an example first introduced in a previous video. Its lessons easily transfer to issues you face individually, in your organization, your family, anywhere. Let's say I want my child's grades to be what I believe their potential to be, A level, but they are currently averaging at the C level. There's a gap between the performance I want and what I observe. This is my frame of the problem, step 1. My current mental model is that the reason for this gap is a lack of incentive. That's my model of the issue, step 2. I decide to offer a monetary reward. That's the solve step, step 3. I do offer that reward. That's the act step, step 4. And for a few quarters, that helps. But then the grades drop. That's more observable behavior. There's still a gap between desired results and actual results after applying the SYSQ process, so I can use 3R pathways to assess what to do. I can choose to respond by using one of 3 R's. We'll start with the most common. Let's say I still believe the issue is a motivation problem. My mental model is that motivation generates grades. I circle back to step 3, solve, and offer more rewards. This React pathway is the simplest adjustment I can make using the 3R assessment. I simply react, most likely with a slight modification of strategy. When I react, I don't question my frame, step 1, or model, step 2. I only question the strategy, step 3. Only questioning the strategy, and perhaps tweaking it a little, is a react response. The react pathway is the simplest and fastest change in the learning loop I can do. Let's say I apply the react pathway, but then a few more quarters ahead, I see my child's grades fall again. I could continue reacting, circling back to step 3, and adjust the strategy by offering more and more rewards. Or I could apply a higher order pathway. I could rethink my model. The react response only works if we have the right model. If we don't reevaluate the usefulness of our model, we can get stuck in a cycle of reacting to the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. Perhaps better described as the hamster wheel approach to strategy. It feels like you or your organization are on a hamster wheel. It may be because you need to choose a higher order response than to simply react. You may need to question your understanding of the causes generating the behavior you wish to improve. As described in a previous video, this fundamental solution could be to develop intrinsic motivation. By offering rewards, I could be short-circuiting the ability to build that. I improve my model of reality by applying the Rethink pathway. We are often so sure we know how something works, we never question it. In this example, maybe the best motivation is intrinsic, and the focus should be on developing intrinsic motivation. This higher order pathway, to rethink, means to question whether we have accurately mapped the territory. We first pause from reactively changing strategy and instead move further back from step 3, solve, to step 2, model. We change our theories of cause and effect. Let's say I work with my child on their intrinsic motivation. After a while, I see better results. The rethink response helped. But suppose my child eventually develops anxiety, and even though they want higher grades, they can't overcome the anxiety. The gap between actual and desired grades once again widens. Sometimes we can rethink our models and come up with fundamentally different strategies, and still get unsatisfactory results. If so, we could continue circling back to step 2 using the rethink path, or we can go even further back in the process to step 1, frame. That's the reframe pathway. Have we identified the wrong issue to work on? or framed it poorly? That's the basis of reframing. The US education system has become hyper-focused on grades. This focus can create anxiety, and what if grades aren't what we should be building in our children? The psychologist, Carol Dweck, has identified an important mindset of successful adults, and it has nothing to do with grades. It's called the growth mindset. This means when faced with challenges, a child doesn't say they are good or bad at that particular challenge. Instead, they focus on how they can learn in the face of challenges. If I choose to focus on whether my child builds this growth mindset, I have reframed the issue. I've moved back to step one and shifted the frame from a grades gap to a mindsets gap. I've chosen the reframe response. Think of the most difficult problems we now face: climate change, health inequities, DEI in the workplace, racism, and many more. It is very likely that our reactions, even our rethinking, are inadequate to the task. We likely need to reframe the issues to choose different and more expansive systemic goals. In conclusion, here's how to think about the 3 responses we can apply if not getting the results we want. If I have the right problem and model, steps 1 and 2 of the SYSQ process, then I can return to step 3 and modify the strategy. I can react. In my experience, I am often way too confident that I have the right frame and right model. If I have the right problem, step 1, but have the wrong model of the system I'm trying to change, I must return to step 2. I must rethink my mental model. And if I have the wrong frame of the problem, I must go back to step 1. I must reframe. Many of the adaptive challenges we now face require at least rethinking our mental models about these challenges, and often we need to even reframe the problems. The capacity to reframe is the ultimate leverage point in Donella Meadows' places to intervene in a system. Dana's number 1 leverage point is the power to change paradigms. It's the ability to reframe what we focus on and want to create in the world. In conclusion, when using the SYSQ process, you can use the 3R assessment to determine the best pathway when not getting the results you want. You can react, which is what we usually do, but instead of reacting, you may need to rethink your mental model. You may even need to reframe the problem. By choosing the appropriate pathway, you are much more likely to have the impact needed to create the future you want. You can achieve high leverage.